So here's a list of the tools that I used when I did my 2007 Dodge Nitro. So the first thing that I needed was vice grips like this to remove the heater hose on the heater core. The other thing you'll need is a 3/8 ratchet, a nice size ratchet. You'll also need a pry tool to pull off different panels and to pry out the dashboard. It's going to be a little bit tough to get it out at one point. Another thing you'll need is a universal joint 3/8 so that you can get into one place swivel, which you'll see in a different part of the video. If you have a electric screwdriver, that would be great. So have your bit for your electric screwdriver. Another thing you're going to need is a T20 Torx bit. And in this case, I have one that's very slim like this. So you're going to need to find one that's slim in order to fit up into the steering column to get the steering wheel off. That's going to be very important. Without that, you're not getting the steering wheel off. Another thing that you'll need is a 13mm socket, standard height. Over here, you need a 13mm socket, deep socket, 13mm, a deep socket, 10mm, a 10mm regular socket. You may or may not need the 8mm socket. I just had it in case. And a 7mm socket, you'll need it. You can use it to take off some of the nuts and bolts around different parts of the car. It's just easier than using a standard screwdriver, which they do have Phillips head 7mm nuts. The next thing you'll need, if you have it, is an extension, 1/4 inch extension for the 10mm socket. 3/8 extensions. If you have 2 or 3, that's going to be helpful. A 10mm wrench, if you can. If you have one like this will be good that you can use to take off the battery. You're going to need one pick tool like this, one flathead screwdriver if you can, a small one to help you with some things. A 1/4 inch ratchet that will go along with this, and your 10mm socket. A regular Phillips head screwdriver. In my case, needed a snipping tool, like a cutter, because I had some zip ties. And then, of course, over here, I recommend that you have a smartphone with you to take pictures of the entire process so you can remember where the majority of your harnesses and your electrical connectors go when you remove them from the steering wheel and underneath the dashboard. So take a picture of everything with this. This will help you put everything back the way it was. I dropped a screw a couple of times, so I have a magnet to pick up screw. And then also this here is a hex Allen wrench. You're gonna need this to remove the, You're gonna need to remove the expansion valve from the old evaporator in order to replace it onto your new one. Now, if you get a new evaporator, a new expansion valve, you're probably still gonna need this because I don't think they come attached to the evaporator. But that pretty much right there, those are all the tools I used for this job. The only other thing that I recommend that you might want, you need a drip pan, something underneath the car to catch some of the coolant, because when you take the heater hose off, it's gonna drop some coolant down on the ground. Not too much, but, and then another thing I recommend, you're probably gonna need an 8mm Allen wrench, like this one, 8mm I believe it's kind of big, and that's because you're gonna need to add some coolant back to the coolant system into the radiator after the job is done. And you're gonna need to bleed the cooling system to make sure there's no air bubbles inside of it. Okay, 2007 Dodge Nitro. So we're gonna start disassembling the dashboard in order to get to the evaporator core. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the center console right here around the gear shifter. So in order to do that, I think I just have to pull these here like this. This comes back, and then you just have to unplug the cable underneath for the 4-wheel drive control if you have one. So I'm gonna do that and we'll come back in the next step. Okay, so this was the plug here. All you had to do was push in the plug right here, push in here, and you pulled it out. Now that we've got that out, let's do the center stack first. I've already put a radio in here before, so I know how this comes off. The first thing is, you see there's a couple of screws up top with Phillips head, so you'll just take those 2 out. After those 2 are out, you'll just take out this here, which will be the center bezel for the radio, and that just pops out. So let's do that next, and I'll come back after. All right, so in order to get these out, I unscrewed those 2 Phillips head screwdrivers, and you see the console piece comes out. So we'll take that out, put that to the side. Now that that's out the way, I already pulled on this here, which is the climate controls. All right, all you have to do is pull on this here, and this comes out, and just make sure you disconnect all the connectors behind all of the buttons here in the back. Okay, so once you pull that top compartment out, you're gonna see here in the back of the radio bezel, this whole climate control console, And the back here is going to be your connectors. So the first one, I'm going to disconnect this one here. You'll see there's a red clip there. You just pull that back, push that, and that comes out. Over here you see a blue connector. You just push in that pin, pull that one out. We'll just take out the rest of these plugs. You have one for the cigarette lighter here and another one down here for, I think, the hazards. All you have to do is find the soft part and just take out those wires. Okay, so the most difficult one to get out here was the cigarette lighter, and all you have to do is push in right here. You see right there? Next to that, in that little hole right there, that little square where you see the yellow, just push in there and then this button will come out. All right, so the next thing I want to do while I'm in here is take out the radio. So for my radio, I've already replaced the factory unit, but it's pretty much the same. On the side of the radio here, you have 2 screws, one up here and one down here. As you can see, there's one screw missing here. The top one is right here. So you just put the screwdriver in here, take that one out. On this side, same thing, you have a screw up here. Take this screw out, and there'll be a 4 screw right here on the bottom of the radio. Just take those out and pull the radio out, disconnect the plugs from the back. Okay, so in the back of my radio, I have a couple of plugs that have to come out. I have aftermarket units. So first off, I have the antenna plug comes out there. I also have a special plug for my DVD connection. And then there's a plug here for all the wiring, the main wiring harness that goes into the radio. You just pull that out, and there's one other one here that's in the mic, and I just pull that out for the microphone. Pull this one out, and there we go. Radio's out. Put it to the side, and now we're left with the empty dashboard. Okay, so now I'm gonna start doing the console trims. So the next one that we know have to come out is the console trims, right? Everything on the dashboard. So the first thing I'm gonna do is this piece here, the defroster plastic trim. And after we do that, we're gonna come to the side pillars and get the left side pillar, the right side pillar, and then we're gonna go down and do the kick panels on the left side and the right side. So we're gonna do that in one step. All right, so in order to get this centerpiece out, all I did was start to pull up here. And then once I got a little bit of room over here, I just took my pick, my pry tool, I put it in here, and I started prying until these clips popped. One popped here, one popped here, and the same thing on the other side. All right, once you get those first pieces to come out over here, you're gonna see there's an extra pin behind it. You see that white hole back there? There's a pin there. So all you have to do to get that pin out is just press up and pull out, and it will come out there. Same thing on the other side. All right, so when you're finished pulling it out, this is what it looks like. You'll see you have all these pins here. You have 1, 2, 1 in the middle, 3 over here, right? This one over here, and then the last one on the corner. And then the whole piece is ready to come out. That's the defroster piece. All right, so the next piece that you want to get out is the speaker grills or the heater vents on the left side and right side. So in order to get those out, you'll see that there's a screw up here, and this is a 7mm socket. So it's easier to get this with the socket. Just put in a small 1/4" wrench, 7mm socket, and then you can just screw these until these come out. All right, so once you got those screws out there, the next thing you want to do is just lower the steering wheel down. And what I think the next thing to do here makes most sense is to pull out the console, the cover for the cluster. So just go ahead and tug on this cluster cover and pull up, slightly up, until it comes out like this. And you'll be getting that out the way. And then now, the next thing is to pull out these side vents. And you can basically just pull on the side vent. On the bottom here, you're probably gonna need to just use a pry tool, and then this should come out. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so you see that just popped out. All right, so this doesn't want to come out yet. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna pull out this pillar here, and mostly these, you just have to pry it out a little bit here on the side. Just pull it out, pull it up. This will come out. And there's a little retainer clip that holds it in place. But once you get that out the way, then you can pull this up and out from here, and there you go. You have your piece on the side, and just repeat the same thing with the right side. Okay, so now that you have that trim piece out with the speaker cover and the heater cover, what I recommend doing is taking the two screws that you had to get out in order to remove that cover. Is probably best idea right now, unless you have a better idea. Just go ahead and take those screws and put them right back in, finger tight, and this will be so that you won't lose track of them, and you can just keep them right there until you're ready to put them back in. Okay, so now that we got that pillar off on the right side, the same way I showed you the driver's side, and we got the screw back in the hole there for later. We got the vent off here. The next thing we want to do is take out the glove compartment, since this is one of the other panels. So just open the glove box, push on the plastic on the side here. Okay, this will open it there. Same thing on the left side. Once that drops down, you just slide it over to the right, and the glove box comes out. Okay, now under the glove box, once the glove box is taken out, you're gonna see this screw right here. You see this right here above like the air box and stuff? You'll see this vent right here, and you'll see that screw. This is the most important screw in order to get out the dashboard on the right side, and I missed this for a little while until I found it. So make sure you get that. Okay, so now that we got the glove box out, the next thing we want to do is take out the kick panel. So I'm going to start with the right side. Now in the videos I've seen, they say that what you want to do is start taking it out at the front, and then the back part here is going to slide towards the front once you release this front here. So let's go ahead and do that first. All right, so get out the front kick panel. All I had to do was go right here, up here, pull a little piece under the weather stripping, and then pull open this right here, and then this came out, and then you can just pull out the rest. All right, so now that you got the kick panel off, you basically, like I said, just pry it out, and then the rest of these two screws here, these two clips that go down here, it's just gonna come up, right? So just make sure you pull it up, and then forward, and then it comes right out. Same thing for the other side. Okay, so since I did the kick panel on the right side off camera, let's do this one on camera. Just come here, get your finger in the kick panel, push it to the middle of the car, pull up here, pull up here, and then it comes right out. Okay. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is pull out the cluster. So in order to take out the cluster, you can see there's a screw on the top right, a screw on the top left, a screw on the bottom right, and a screw on the bottom left. So this is probably going to be a good time to go ahead and disconnect the battery. So I'm going to do that first and then remove this cluster. Now, obviously behind the cluster, there's going to be a couple of connectors and harnesses. If I can, I'll show you that while I disconnect them or afterwards. Okay, so lucky for me in this case, in this 2007 Nitro, there's only 3 plugs that have to be removed from the back of the cluster. Just pinch on the harness where there's the little, what you call it at top. And you see this one is by itself. So this one you saw where that came out of. And over here, there's 2 that come out. This one here. So you pretty much can't mess these up when it comes time to put these back in. Okay, so now that you got the cluster out, the next thing you want to do is remove the knee panel, which is underneath the steering wheel. This is similar to the other side. So from what I understand, all you have to do is pull on this, like this here, and it comes down. And I got some stuff in there, so if you have any coins or anything in this tray over here, you're gonna want to remove those items first, but you may not need to. So just pull it down, slide it to the left, and that comes out. Okay, so as I had mentioned before, once you pull down this glove compartment, it's gonna be resting like here. You just push it to the left, and it comes out. All right, so one of the next things you also have in the way is these 2 connectors, the yellow and white connectors. Pretty self-explanatory. Just use a pick tool to squeeze the harness in order to disconnect those and pull those out from their sockets where they're held into place, like this. And underneath here, you're gonna see there's the connector for the left side driver's side speaker. Just disconnect the speaker on this side and the right side. Okay, so now that you got the knee panel off, the next thing you want to do is take out the center console. In order to do that, you can see here, there's a screw right here on the right side of the shifter. And inside here, there are 2 screws in the bottom. So just take out these 2 screws, and then we're gonna show the next part, taking the console cover up. Now there's one more screw I didn't see. As I started pulling on it inside the console to the left side of the shift lever, over here you'll see a screw. You need to pull that last one out. All right, so once you've removed that screw here and the 2 screws inside the armrest console, in the back here, most of us Nitros have like an auxiliary outlet. So you're gonna need to just pop off the trim panel on the side here. Just push it off and then take this out and then disconnect the plug behind it for the AC. All right, so once you get that cover off the back, there's the plug here, just disconnect it. And now you have the console trim piece cover from the back that you can take off. The next thing you're supposed to do is disconnect the cover of the emergency brake. And to do that, over here you'll see there's a zipper. So just grab onto this zipper. If it doesn't have like the zip thing, just grab like a pick tool and then pull this down as much as possible. So in my case, this is what my pick tool looks like. I just jammed it inside the zipper and I pulled it all the way down. Okay, so I'm about to pull out the console and I realized that there's one little thing you need to see here. The zipper, the cover for the zipper here. You need to pull that cover for the zipper here as much as you can and just wiggle it and pull that emergency brake lever through the zipper underneath. So what happens is the zipper is going to come out and it's going to come over the e-brake, and now the e-brake is underneath and I'm about to pull the entire thing off. Okay, so now you can see that after I took out those couple of screws, which once again is the 1 screw that was inside that hole right there, the 2nd screw on the right side, and the last 2 screws were inside the console holder. Took off the back panel, and all I had to do was lift up the entire thing, squeeze it right here to get the emergency brake through to stay underneath, and the whole cover came off. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is remove the instrument cluster support bracket, which is this one right here. You see these 2 screws? Let's see if I can get a pointer in here. You see we have this screw here and this screw here, and down below under the carpet you have this screw here, and there's another one on the other side, but it's underneath this plastic. So if you follow this air duct back here, you'll see that right where the e-brake area is, keep going back right here. This plastic, you need to use a pry tool to get that out. So let me see if I have my pry tool ready. You just take the pry tool that looks like this, you get underneath there, and you just wiggle that until that comes out, and then you pull out this entire piece, and then we'll go to take out the bracket. All right, so one of the tips I have for removing that tool, removing that plug, is to push up the passenger seat so that you have some extra space. And right where you see the bolt for the screw that holds in the passenger seat, you can get your pry tool right underneath here and get a perfect amount of leverage to pop that up. And then you just pull this over, pull this out, and you're good to go. On to the next. All right, so there's 2 things you should know about taking off this bracket here. The first is that this side here is very easy to take off. This one here is no problem to get in. This one here is a little bit more difficult access because the shift holder is blocking direct access to that nut. So you want to use a swivel universal joint and a short socket 13 mil to get in there. And then on this side here, this screw is buried underneath the dashboard on the right side. You also want to use a short socket to get in there. I'll show you what I mean in a second. All right, to get that left socket off, the left bolt off, you want to use a short 13, not a deep socket, and then you can fit your ratchet underneath like this, and you can pull this off. Or you could also use an open end crescent wrench or a ratcheting wrench. All right, so I'm getting to the point now where the screws that I'm taking off have to be recorded so that I know exactly where they go back, because once the dashboard comes out, all of those screws that come out to get the dashboard out, you're going to want to know where everything goes back, all the nuts and bolts. So what I did was I came up with an idea. Since I didn't have a plastic organizer container, I took a box of Ziploc bags. You can probably go get the cheapest box of Ziploc bags from like the dollar store or something like that. And what I did was I put a piece of paper that I cut up in each one and I numbered them. Okay, so here we go. So bag number 1, as you can see, I have number 1 written on the tag inside. These 4 screws, I'm remembering that they came from the bracket underneath the steering wheel that holds onto the console. All right, so the second major part now we're gonna start moving on is the screws here for the instrument, the dashboard. So I'm now on the left side, the driver's side, right near the brake pedal, right? So on the left side kick panel, there's a 13mm bolt here, and there's also one on the passenger side. So we're gonna take these out first. All right, so we got the driver's side out. Now we're over to the passenger side. So on the right side of the car, you'll see here's the screw here. Just get your 13mm socket, break that loose. It's kind of nice and snug in there. All right, we'll take that out and we'll see what's next. All right, so those kick panel bolts are out. I got them put in a bag right here, and we'll put those as bag number 2. Okay, so the next step for screws 3 is to replace the 4 screws inside the top of the dashboard that came underneath the defroster, or better yet, they're like right underneath the windshield. Those 4 screws come out. Those should be 13mm. So let's take those 4 out now. All right, so once you've got those screws taken out, all you got to do is go in there with a magnet and pull each one out until you got all 4. All right, so we're gonna save those screws in bag number 3. These will be the 4 screws that hold the dashboard in underneath the defroster vent cover and underneath the windshield. All right, so the next thing that I'm seeing in the instructions is to take the steering wheel out the car. So to take the steering wheel out the car, one of the first things you need to do is go underneath the steering wheel here, right? And the steering wheel cover underneath has a T20 screw in it. So put the T20 and pull out this 1 screw. Okay, after you pull out that T20, you're gonna see that there's this rubber cover here, the shield. All you have to do is push them down, and it comes out. And that's the cover. All right, so once you got that first T20 torque screw out of the middle, then as you go up here, you're gonna see on the left side and the right side, there's 2 holes here, right underneath the cruise control and right underneath the turn signal. There's 2 holes. There's also 2 T20s in there. You'll need to get in there and get those out. All right, so once you got those 2 T20 screws out from the column cover, all you have to do is just remove it. It really just comes right apart. You just squeeze it and pull it off and the bottom comes out. And that will give you the bottom and the top cover. And there you go. You have your cover for the steering column. And now the next step is to go underneath here and start disconnecting the different wire connectors. So as you can see here, there's one, let's see, right here. This plug, this plug, this plug. Every plug you see plugged in from the wiring harness of the car to the column, now's the time to disconnect them. All right, so once you have all your plugs disconnected from the ignition and all of those wires, you're gonna have this bundle right here. This harness is gonna hang by itself. Just make sure you take a picture or make a note of where these come from. I have mine recorded by video. And then you're gonna see this one last thing here that looks like it's in the way. This wire here, you see this like hose? This is actually a wire. Okay, so I just checked, and the correct way to take out the last cable, you're gonna see here that there's a cable attached to the back of the steering wheel that comes from the ignition area. What you have to do is there's a little button back here, and then right here. In order for you to squeeze and remove that button, you have to turn the key to the on position. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so with our key turned to the on position, we were able to unlock this mechanism. And then as you can see back here, there's this connector. You see right here? It came out from right inside here. This solid metal piece behind. I'm gonna put it back in some, you see there? You just squeeze on it like every other connector, and then it comes out. Okay, in order to take the steering column out, there's 4 screws in here. You're gonna need a 13mm deep socket. Let me go back in here. When you're taking out the steering wheel, this bolt right here has to come out, 13mm. This holds the steering wheel in place in the spline. And then as you look towards the back here, let me put some light. Then in the back, you're gonna see 4 of these. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 on the other side. There's gonna be 4 of these nuts. You take those 4 out first. And also there's this plate here that has sensors possibly in your car. But this plate here also has, it's in the same position. There's one bolt on top, like this one here. And when you take this plate off, there's also another one. So it's gonna be 4 black nuts that come out of here. And then also, you see where I have the ratchet here? Where I have the socket, there's a 10mm that comes out of that socket there. And then there's a 10mm right here where I'm shining a light, okay? Those right there are all the screws you need to pull the steering wheel out. Other than that, just make sure you disconnect the electrical connectors first. Okay, so when you're taking off the black screw on this bracket, it's gonna look like one of these flat black screws in here, right? Flat black nuts. So when you try to pull out this bracket, you're gonna realize that there's something else holding it in. And so what happens is, in the back, there's also gonna be this screw that's holding in this bracket. So take out that 10mm screw. You're gonna need a long extension to get in there, and possibly even a deep socket. And then we're gonna put that back in this bag of the steering wheel. Number 4, these are the first 4 or 5 different screws that had to come off to get the steering wheel out. All right, once you got that bracket off and out the way, the last thing you're gonna need to do is get this last screw underneath here to pull the steering wheel out. That bracket comes off first, and then this last 13mm screw comes out. And as you can see from up in here, that's how you get the steering wheel off. Okay, so bag number 4 here, these are the screws that took off the steering column and the steering column bracket. We got that one silver screw in there, and then this is that one big screw that goes to hold the yoke in place. All right, so one of the other things you got to do, there's 2 screws here, one right here and one right here on this side where the speedometer goes, right here, the cluster. Take those nuts off. And then down here, you're going to also have the footwell interior dome light that has this cover on it. So this is it right here. There's a little connector that goes inside the top of the dome light. Just pinch on it and remove that. Also, from my notes, you're going to see that over here, there is, on the left side, there's a zip tie that holds all this wiring in place here. There's also a connector that goes up here that probably won't have to come out, but this has to get zip tied back right here. All right, also up here, you're gonna see that we have another connector that needs to be pulled out. So in order to pull out this connector, you wanna get your pry tool. So let me go ahead and look at my pry tool. All right, so some of these wiring harnesses have to come out. So in this one here on the right side of behind where the cluster, the speedometer goes, there's one set of wires right here. So you're gonna have to release those from there using the pry tool. So get the pry tool behind there. And once you get the pry tool on there, just go ahead and keep prying until you pop this out. Might have to go from above, but just keep prying until you get that out, and there you go. That's what it looks like when you pull the first side harness out. Okay, so after you got that first plug to come out from that side, follow the wire here, and you're gonna be brought to the second location where there's a plug to take it out. So the next one, you're gonna try to get your pry tool in here and try to work that until you get that one to pop out. The next one will be over here. You're gonna pry that one out, and that's gonna be all 3 of the wires to get them pried out so that they can be separated from the dashboard. Also, another thing is there's a 13mm bolt located here along the steering column, and that bolt from underneath the steering wheel, you'll see it goes in right here. It's a 13mm. You have to go in there. It's in pretty tight, and you have to take that bolt all the way out. And what that does is it loosens the shaft of the steering column so that you can pull the steering column out. All right, so one of the next things you'll also have in the way is these 2 connectors, the yellow and white connectors. Pretty self-explanatory. Just use a pick tool to squeeze the harness in order to disconnect those and pull those out from their sockets where they're held into place like this. And underneath here, you're gonna see there's the connector for the left side driver's side speaker. just disconnect the speaker on this side and the right side. All right, so once you've disconnected that speaker, this is the speaker connection, by the way. It was easier for me to just remove the speaker because there's 2 screws on top, and I just pushed in this little tab right here and I was able to disconnect the speaker. Once you do that, you start pulling the entire wire harness from the dashboard. You start pulling it through here into the radio area until it comes out like this. Okay, and then just put it towards the back seat of the car, and now you have the wiring harness out and it's clear. Okay, so there's a couple of connectors here that came out. The first one here, I marked it with a piece of red tape for myself, and this plug goes in here. So I marked this with a piece of red tape so I know that when I'm back here, this goes there. And the same thing over here, there's a red connector here. And I also marked my connector with a red piece of tape here. So when I'm ready to put this back together, this plug goes back up in here in that connector. All right, so on bag number 5, I'm also gonna include, there's 2 screws here that have to come out. Underneath the radio, there's 1 screw over here, and on the right side, there's another screw over here. So you just unscrew them, they're 10 millimeters. Just take out the screws with the magnet when you're done. So those 2 screws are going back in bag number 5. All right, so on the right side glove box, you're gonna have the connectors in here. These harnesses need to be disconnected. And then over here, there's 1 10 millimeter screw that needs to come out. This will go in bag number 5. In my car, it's a 2007, the dashboard didn't wanna come out. It was fully wiggled and free. But right here on this spot, above this bracket underneath the steering wheel, it did not wanna come out. It's a very tight fit. You see how I have these scratch marks here? So I had to use a pry tool to yank the dashboard over this silver piece to get it to pull out, and now I'm about to pull out the dashboard. And the last thing you'll need to do is disconnect the 2 harnesses that are here on the kick panel. Driver side, left side underneath the steering wheel. There's this one here and that connector there. Just press in the button and pull back this latch here and it'll release. Another thing that will make things easier is to remove all of these wires from the dashboard where the radio usually sits. Just pull them all through to underneath the steering wheel like this. Just make sure every wire is free and just get them through there one by one. All right, so while pulling the wires out, when I got to the dashboard right side, I couldn't get it out. I knew there were some wires. I figured it was the airbag. So if your model does not have an airbag, this won't be an issue. But for mine, the easiest way to do it was to take out the 2 screws for the airbag, which come right here and right here. It's on the underside of the glove compartment. So you have to put your 13 millimeter wrench inside the glove compartment and pull out the 2 nuts that come off right here. And here's just what they look like. Okay, so after you pull the dashboard out, the first thing you want to do is look for this over here underneath the blower motor. There's just a little grommet that needs to be pulled out to disconnect. And then over here, there's going to be a wire hanging coming from the wire harness. I believe this probably goes to the blower motor, and this, you're going to disconnect this here. Okay, I'm starting to do the stuff to take off the heater control box now. And over here, the only thing you got to do is remove that 10 millimeter bolt. Now, of course, needless to say, is that you have to make sure that there's no freon in your system, so it needs to be evacuated, or you need to know that your leak has leaked out all the refrigerant and that is empty. And then after that, I'm going to go ahead and get a pair of pliers. I'm just going to open up those 2 connectors right there. I'm going to pinch them open, squeeze them open, and then just pull these 2 hoses off. And I have a drain pan sitting underneath the car to catch the antifreeze when it comes out after that. All right, so once you get the HVAC box out of the car, bring it up inside to your workshop, and it's not going to be perfectly balanced, so you're going to have to find something to hold it upright. But basically what you want to do, unfortunately, there's 2 steps to this. The first step is you have to take off the heater core section on like the left side. You see this spot right here? This is where the heater core comes out of. So you have to take that cover off, and as you can see here with the 2 rubber green things that are blocking and holding in the heater core hoses, this is the heater core assembly. So you're gonna have to take this off. I'll show you when I put this back together how I got this off. But basically, once you do that, you have to go around the box and you have to look for every possible screw or clip that's holding it together. And after I start putting this back together, I'll show you where the main parts were that I had to release them in order to get this cover off. All right, so that's the most annoying part, but that's what you have to do, is you have to get this cover off that looks like this, right? So if the HVAC comes in, your house looks like this cover will come off completely. You put that down to the side, and then what's gonna be in here is gonna be this assembly. Now, I also took out my blower fan. I have the blower fan here ready to go put it right back in. The blower fan is kind of heavy, 5 pounds or so. Maybe not 5 pounds, but it feels really heavy and it makes this thing very unstable and uneven. So I decided to take that out first, and before I went ahead and got the rest of the clips available to be released to take it out. Now inside mine, it's not very dirty. You can see there's dirty stuff in here, so I'm gonna wash this out real quick and wipe out all of this before I put the new one in. But just so you can see how this goes in. All right, so the way that the evaporator core is inside this unit goes like this. I'm gonna show you with the new one. So once the old one is out, the new one is gonna go in just like this. You're gonna drop it down inside and get this through the foam here. That's the part that goes outside into the engine bay. And so you just basically drop it in just like this. And that's it. Once you have it in there, you install the box. That's where the blower motor goes. That's out to the firewall of the engine. And that's it. Let me go ahead and finish that now. All right, so when putting this back together, when you're looking at the bottom side, this is where the fan goes, the blower motor. And up here, you'll see we have the Schrader valve, right? Okay, so that's the top of the box over there. So on the bottom, I just wanted to show you the main locations where the screws go to either put it back, or in this case, for you to take it apart. So you have to take out this one screw right here that you can see, that's one. The second screw is right here, right to the right side. Take out that screw, 2. The third screw is here by the switch, the button, the connector. That's number 3. Number 4 is over here. Same type of screw, just pull out that one. And number 5 is hidden up inside this little end piece, all right, on the side. When you're looking from the bottom, this is where you're gonna find these mounting brackets. These are the ones that I had to take out. And there may be a couple more, but these are the main ones. So basically from the underside, you wanna look at every place where you see one of these screws. And if you see a screw underneath here, you pretty much wanna take it out on the left side. On this side over here, this is the side of the heater core. You're gonna see these 2 screws here, that one there, those 2, right, top and bottom. That goes on this side. You don't have to touch those. These 2 screws here stay in place. This is the heater core side, but to get the other side off, you have to take out all the screws that you see on the bottom that look like that. It makes more sense, take out the fan too. All right, let's move to the next. All right, so I got this box back together now, but I just wanted to show you where the last screw that I put in. So here are the outgoing pipes. These are the heater core pipes. So when you look inside here, you'll see that downside inside there, all the way in the bottom, there's one of those T20 Torx screws. That is like one of the first or last screws that you should take out. It's a little bit difficult to get it there without a magnet. But yeah, pretty much take most of the screws out. That's one of them that has to come out. All right, so another thing to mention here is that in order to get this box to start it open, before you get to the screws, there's 4 clips that you have to take off. One of them is hidden. So from the back of the box where you have the sticker on it that says AC, or you can see this like this, or you see the connector here, and you see the pipes in here for the heater core, right? On the back side, you have 1 clip here, 2nd clip here, and the 3rd clip right here. And then on the other side, there's 1 secret location. Okay, and the 4th clip is right here underneath the outlets for the heater core. You see the foam right here where the Schrader valve is? You just pull back the foam. That's the 4th clip right there. Now, another thing that's important too is that when you take this off, you might not notice it just taking it off. You won't notice this until you're putting it back together. But you'll see here that there's this rubber seal. It's like a weather strip seal. And this is located here where the evaporator core comes out of the box. So this right here, it has a notch in it. And so when you're finished, it's supposed to be flush like this. So half of this is supposed to be inside the box, and this half you see right here that I'm touching, this is on the outside. So you want to make sure that you get this seal right here in between the closing, parts of the, you see how there's a little gap there? So this right here is supposed to stay partially on the outside and on the inside. Just make sure you have this yellow thing partially inside the box and outside the box before you snap it together and put all the screws. And then of course, when you're done with that here, just make sure you maybe get a little bit of glue, because there was some glue here, and you just reattach this foam that keeps this covered on the outside. Just put a little glue to keep it sealed up tight. Okay, that's it for this.